U.S. Senate seat opens for the first time in 30 years. Tonight, the top three Democratic candidates face off. On the economy.
They created the affordability problem.
Immigration. And health care.
These services are critical for everyday citizens.
These are the top issues facing Illinois and the nation.
Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton.
We don't need more of the same tired playbook.
Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy.
I have a track record of standing up to bullies.
Or Congresswoman Robin Kelly.
I've never been afraid to show up, stand up, or speak up.
Who will voters pick to represent Democrats this November? Live from Chicago's very own and your local election headquarters, Illinois' U.S. Senate Democratic primary debate starts now.
Good evening. I'm Micah Mater.
And I'm Taman Bradley. We welcome you to our debate between the top Democratic candidates for U.S. Senate with just under 1 month to go before Election Day.
Tonight, we're broadcasting live from the historic WGN-TV studios on Chicago's North Side. But this debate is airing live on 6 Nexstar television stations serving Illinois.
There are 10 names on the Democratic primary ballot. The candidates invited tonight met Nexstar's participation criteria, and you can find out about that on our website, WGNTV.com.
And before we begin, let's set the ground rules. Candidates will have 60 seconds for each question. If there are follow-ups, candidates will have 30 seconds.
There will be up to 30 seconds allowed for any rebuttals at the discretion of the moderators. At the end of the debate, each candidate will have 30 seconds for closing statements.
And candidates, you'll know your time is up when you hear that bell. That one. Tonight, there is no studio audience, and candidates, we ask that you refrain from interrupting or speaking over one another for the next hour.
Good evening. Let's get going. Thanks for being here. The Department of Homeland Security is currently shut down while Democrats push the White House to agree to tighter restrictions on federal immigration agents. If you were negotiating a deal right now, what specific items would you insist be included in any compromise? Lieutenant Governor Stratton, we'll begin with you. 60 seconds, please.
Well, first of all, let me make it clear that everyone is expecting that ICE gets reined in, and I want to see ICE be abolished. I do not believe that this agency can be reformed, and we've seen the terror it has inflicted upon all of our communities. At the very least, when we talk about what kind of demands that Democrats should be making, and I believe Democrats should hold the line on this, we should, number one, make sure that ICE and CBP is out of our American cities where they've invaded and occupied. Number two, we need to make sure that there's no immunity, that any of the federal agents that have committed any crime are investigated and prosecuted. And that is at the very least. And I would not give my vote to an agency that I want to fund, an agency I want to see abolished. I do want to make it clear that when it comes to standing up for ICE, Congressman Krishnamurthy has accepted money from, he voted to fund ICE, he voted to thank ICE, and accepted money from an ICE contractor. I'm going to be someone that stands up and fights for the people.
And we'll get to money in this campaign in a second, but Congresswoman Kelly, 60 seconds, what specific items must be included in a DHS compromise?
Kristi Noem has got to go. I filed articles of impeachment because she has taken a reign of terror across the United States. So that would be one of mine, but no more masks, no more picking people up off the street or going to their doors. They have to wear cameras. They have to be held accountable, like what happened with Alex Preddy and Renee Good. They have to be held accountable and investigated. And they have to have rules like regular police officers do. When a police officer shoots somebody, their gun is taken and they're told to go to the office or go home. That has not happened with ICE. They can do police car chases. You can't do that in a regular city with a police officer. So all those different things, they have to have the same rules as law enforcement does in normal circumstances, like Chicago Police Department. So,
Congressman Krishnamurthy, you get 60 seconds as well.
I think we have to abolish Trump's ICE. This is the position that's shared by Governor Pritzker and others for a good reason. We have to do the following. First, the masks have to come off. ID has to go on, body cameras have to go on, no more warrantless arrests. There must be third-party investigations of the use of force. There can't be roving gangs of ICE and CBP agents creating trouble in our cities. Now, with regard to these attacks, it seems like that seems to be the standard MO of the Lieutenant Governor, attack, attack, attack. Look, I'm an immigrant myself. This is personal to me. I don't need a lecture from anyone about standing up to ICE. With regard to thanking ICE, this issue that she brought up, it was actually an issue of condemning anti-Semitism, something I'm going to do 8 days out of the week. With regard to the Palantir donation, as soon as it came to my attention, we donated it. Now, one thing the Lieutenant Governor doesn't say is that the DLGA, which she presided over, received hundreds of thousands of dollars from CoreCivic, the largest private prison contractor in the country that operated Broadview.
And
hypocrisy is
your
really
time is up. We're going to get to
rampant here.
We will get to the money.
May I respond since my name was used?
If you have 30 seconds to respond.
Thank you so much. I just want to make it clear to everyone who's watching at home that Congressman Krishnamurthy wants to distract from the fact that he picked up the phone for the last 7 years and called the CTO of Palantir, one of the contractors that ICE is working with, to terrorize our communities. And in doing so, asked for money directly to his campaign, and did it even while ICE was in the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois terrorizing our communities. It is wrong. Those are his values. He's not going to be someone to stand up for the people.
Well, let's give you 30 seconds to respond, and then we'll come back to you, Congressman.
Well, I'm going to talk about both of my opponents because, yes, Roger took money from owners of people that supported ICE or owned ICE detention centers, but the Lieutenant Governor, when she was on the board of the Lieutenant Governors Association, took money from people who own and support private prisons. So they both have taken money in places that they shouldn't have, and their millionaires and billionaires are trying to buy this election.
Well, let me ask you this. Candidates, the campaign donors that you've accepted money for have become a flashpoint in this race, obviously, because you've brought it up. And we have a similar questions for each of you. And Congressman Krishnamurthy, since they brought it up, you accepted nearly $30,000 from Palantir executives whose firm has a big contract with ICE. You gave the money away to several immigration organizations. Tell us what restrictions you place on campaign contributions overall.
Well, I don't take money from private prison contractors, something that unfortunately under the Lieutenant Governor's supervision and management of the DLGA, they actually did. Now, not only that, she's not willing to answer why that happened under her tenure as the leader, as one of the leaders of the DLGA, and then it turned around and supported her as a super PAC in this campaign.
What happened to the $30,000?
I donated it to 3 different migrant rights groups. I'm proud of the fact that we have over 80 to 90,000 individual donors who have supported me over the years, mainly because of my independence. I've gone after big tobacco for fueling the vaping epidemic. That's why Time magazine said there's a jewel-shaped target on my back. I've gone after grocery store chains such as Kroger's and Albertsons, which tried to merge and hike prices and hurt workers. I helped to end that merger, and that's why the UFCW union endorsed me. And I'm going to continue to maintain that independence regardless, and that's why so many unions have endorsed me too.
Lieutenant Governor Stratton, you continue to say that you won't accept corporate PAC money in this campaign, but you are accepting money from corporate executives and company leaders. In fact, you've accepted PAC and direct corporate contributions in your state campaign funds. The Sun-Times, as you see on the screen, reported months ago that you returned a $5,000 check from the Marquee Energy corporate PAC, but you took $21,000 from the same family controlling the company. Your rivals have called this hypocrisy. We'll give you 60 seconds. How do you respond?
Thank you for this opportunity, because I am going to reaffirm that I am not taking any corporate PAC money in this race, and I've upheld that commitment. But I think what's also important is to point out that I'm not taking money from MAGA allies. I'm not taking money from the corporations that are funding Donald Trump's Golden Ballroom. And I'm not taking any money from those that are authors of Project 2025. Congressman Krishnamurthy can't say the same because he has taken money from those sources. And you ask the question, well, what did he do with the $30,000 he took from an ICE contractor? My question is, has he returned all of the money that he's taken from MAGA allies and advisors to Donald Trump? The answer is no, and that is why so many people are fed up with what's happening in Washington, D.C.
Congressman Krishnamurthy, she says you're taking money from MAGA allies of Donald Trump. How do you respond? 30 seconds.
I impeached Donald Trump twice. I led the first impeachment inquiry with regard to Donald Trump.
Florida, well, are you taking money from Republican donors?
I'm sure that there are probably some Republican donors, just like there were to the Lieutenant Governor's campaign, her state campaign, and then she funneled it into the Senate campaign illegally, according to a recent complaint made to the FEC. But the most important thing is this, the 14 unions that have endorsed me have done so because I've stood up to Donald Trump. And the reason why I was in the Minnesota murderers notes is in
Okay.
part
Your time
because
is
I
up,
stood
was
up
your
as
30
well.
seconds.
Yeah, your time's up, sir. Congresswoman Kelly, last summer you said this about your campaign finances.
A lot of people that say they don't take corporate money, and I'm talking about even some of my colleagues, they don't take corporate money, but they take the money I raise. So it's laundered through me.
So what restrictions do you have on campaign contributions, and what does that mean, it's laundered through me?
First of all, I believe in campaign finance reform. Good people don't run, good people don't win, and good people don't stay in because they don't want to be on that rat race of raising money. I would be all too happy with public financing of campaigns. What I meant by that, a lot of people will run and say exactly what the lieutenant governor said, and then when they get to Congress and realize your dues are $150,000, $200,000. My dues, if I wasn't running for Senate, $550,000 because I'm in leadership, and then I help everyone who asks me to bring more Democrats into Congress. So people ask me for money that say they don't want corporate money, but they're fine with taking my money. So that's what I mean by laundering it, that I accept some corporate money, and then when I pay my dues or give people money that, need a donation, they take that money. But I believe in campaign finance reform so that races like what's happening now, races cannot be bought, that it'll bring more diversity into Congress because all different kind of people can run.
Your time is up, but I did want to do a 30-second follow-up. Why does it matter who donates to a campaign if, in fact, they support your ideas? 30 seconds.
Because people shouldn't be able to buy campaigns. If someone's dropping $5 million, then you'll be able to do more commercials. And it does keep people from running. And especially like young people, it keeps from running. Even women of color, if you notice in Congress, we come in later because we just don't have the money and the support to do that. And some people may be lawyers or doctors and they have, a better financial system behind them. I think it just makes it fair. That's what I think, that it'll bring more diversity to Congress and not so many multimillionaires.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor Stratton, same question, yes.
Yeah, so first of all, let me just say that I was proudly endorsed by In Citizens United because In Citizens United looked at this field of candidates and decided that I was the one that was going to truly fight for campaign finance reform when I get to Washington, D.C. And that means no corporate PAC money, ending Citizens United, and making sure that we stop congressional stock trading. I will work on that, and that's why they endorsed me. And by the way, I'm proud to be endorsed by Governor J.B. Pritzker.
No, I was just going to say, you have a super PAC that is airing, or it's not your super PAC, but there's a super PAC playing in this contest. They're airing ads in support of you. You've stopped short of asking them to disclose their donors. Why? 30 seconds.
I have not made any request for anyone to not demonstrate who the donors are. In fact, it's a public filing on the FEC. So that is nothing that I can coordinate with. It's not something that I work with. But what I will say is I am proud of the grassroots campaign that I'm building, the work that I've been doing from day one. And again, I'm proud to be supported by Governor J.B. Pritzker, as well as all of the others who have decided that I'm the best one to be trusted to fight for the people of Illinois in Washington, D.C.
And Congressman Krishnamurthy, you've not weighed in 30 seconds.
I get 30 or 60?
You get 30, yes.
Okay. Well, look, first of all, the lieutenant governor likes to say she doesn't receive corporate PAC money in the front door of her campaign. It comes through the side door, the rear door, and the garage door because it comes through her super PAC. It comes through her state committee, which illegally funnels it into the Senate committee. And, she says she runs a people-powered campaign. It's powered by like 2 people. The super PAC is really what's running this campaign. And I think, at this point, we need to end the hypocrisy.
All right, we need to move on. Let's.
He did mention my name. May I please just respond 15 seconds?
Let's move on to the economy. Just because it's a top concern of voters, right? That's what our January poll found. And Lieutenant Governor Stratton, you support a $25 federal minimum wage. You'll have 60 seconds to answer. What's your response to employers who argue that an increase that large, coupled with current economic conditions, will crush small businesses? 60 seconds.
Well, let's start with the fact that the federal minimum wage is $7.25. And I'm very proud of the work that we did here in Illinois to raise the minimum wage. It was the first big bill that the governor and I got signed into law after taking office to $15 an hour. That is $31,200 per year. Think about trying to take care of yourself or your family with that salary. So to me, we have to stop thinking about what the minimum wage is. We have to think of a livable wage. And right now, more than 40% of Americans are making less than a livable wage in this country. I want people to be able to put food on the table, put a little money in their pockets, maybe save for their future, and spend in those small businesses. And the way that I will enact this type of legislation as I fight for it is I'll make sure that the business community is at the table, making sure their voices are a part of this conversation. But we cannot keep telling people that it's okay to barely make ends meet. We need to pay the people.
Congressman Krishnamurthy, you support a phase in $17 an hour federal minimum wage. It's 15 now. And as you heard Lieutenant Governor say, that's barely enough at 15. But for a full-time worker, that comes to $35,000 a year. The 17 that you mentioned, that's just above the poverty line for a family of 4. Is $17 an hour enough? And should it happen sooner than 2030?
Possibly. I mean, right now, I've co-sponsored the legislation that Bernie Sanders has put forward called the Raise the Wage Act. And that is the act that you are referring to. $7.25 is poverty wages. It's abominable. It has to be raised. I think that we have to balance two things. On the one hand, we have to make sure that the minimum wage is raised. On the other hand, we have to make sure that small businesses are able to continue to hire, to grow. They provide the vast majority of the jobs in this economy. As a former small business person, I signed the front of the check and the back of the check, and I can tell you that it's important that we make sure that small businesses stay viable. The last thing I would say is that, you know, my second job in life was working at McDonald's, flipping burgers in Peoria, Illinois, and there's no way they would have hired me at $25 an hour because I didn't know what I was doing. And we want to make sure that we get as many young people into the workforce, into those entry-level jobs, and we don't want to have a wage too high that prevents them from getting that employment.
Same question to you, Congressman Kelly. Why did you land on boosting the federal minimum wage to $17 an hour?
Well, I agree. $7.25 is way too low. It's been that way for too long. And I have also signed on to Bernie's bill, Raising the Wage Act. Just from studies, speaking to my colleagues, speaking to what can pass. We need, 60 votes in the Senate and 218 votes in the House. And it's easy to throw out numbers, but you got to get it done. It's easy to make what sounds good, but we don't want it to be empty promises because we don't want people disappointed either.
So you think this will work?
I do. I do think it will work. Also, I've gone around and spoken to about 50 small businesses, and I'm a daughter of a small business owner, and they have complained to me that they're concerned that if we raise it too fast, too quickly, that they'll go out of business. So that's a business going out of business. Usually small businesses hire people in the neighborhood, so they'll have to not have as many workers. And then with the tariffs on top of it, they feel like their cost of living, what they gross or net is so small now.
Sticking with the economy, let's talk about an issue that's important to a lot of voters, especially downstate. Illinois farmers are the top producer of soybeans in the United States. Given the current trade environment, what specific steps would you take to open new markets for Illinois agriculture exports? Congresswoman Kelly, we know that your district includes a lot of farmland, so what steps would you take? 60 seconds.
Sure. Well, first of all, I would reverse the tariffs that the president has put on. We're number one in soybeans, and China was our number one customer, and we've lost them as customers. They've invested in Brazil. They started that during Trump 1.0. So rolling those tariffs back would be one of the first things. The other thing is opening up with other countries. I'm on something called House Democracy Partnerships, and I remember when President Obama opened Cuba, and farmers are really excited about having another place to sell their products to. The other thing is bringing back USAID. That killed the farmers. That was dismantled, and that was food that was bought and sold all over the world. And the other thing is SNAP. He's cut SNAP so much. People that have SNAP go to the grocery store. They buy groceries. We have to buy the groceries from the farmers, and he's hurt that too. So they've been hurt. USAID, tariffs, and SNAP.
Same question, Lieutenant Governor, opening new markets to farmers. 60 seconds.
Well, I like exactly what Governor Pritzker and I did here in Illinois when we saw this president throw out these tariffs, waking up in the middle of the night and putting a post on social media instead of thinking very strategically about how tariffs should be used, including against our allies. we took a delegation to Mexico to make sure that we could build our own direct relationships. The state of Illinois with Mexico, we took representatives from soybean, beef, from corn, and made sure that we built those relationships directly. So I think that when we have the kind of chaos that we have coming out of Washington, D.C., it's up to real leaders to step up and forge those relationships ourselves and make sure that we can keep that trade continuing. And we did that.
Congressman Krishnamurthy, 60 seconds, same question.
Well, you know, these tariffs are absolutely killing our farmers, including those who plant soy. And the reason is this, because the tariffs are both increasing their input costs, such as fertilizer from places like Canada, and they're subject to counter tariffs on their exports of soy to places like China. And so China is buying from elsewhere, including in Latin America. So we need to do at least three things. First, we got to remove the blanket tariffs, okay? When you impose blanket tariffs on everything from everywhere, you raise prices on everything for everyone. And that includes farmers, and you hurt them on their exports. So we have to reclaim that power to the people back in Congress. Second, the Commerce Department has to play a much greater role in opening new markets in other countries. And that means, you know, having trade missions there, making sure that we have reciprocal agreements that work for each country, and especially our farmers. Last, our Soy Research Center in Champaign is being defunded by Washington, and that has to reverse too.
Congressman, thank you.
Inflation, rising medical costs, and the expiration of enhanced premium tax credits have led to rising health insurance premiums. Lieutenant Governor Stratton, you favor Medicare for all, but that's not the position of the Republican Party or many elected officials in your own caucus. How will you go about enacting Medicare for all? You've got 60 seconds.
Well, first of all, when we talk about affordability being a big issue right now for Americans and certainly Illinoisans, one of the big reasons why is health care and how expensive it is. I can tell you that we need to be clear, a GoFundMe account is not a health care plan. And we are seeing millions of Americans being stripped of their health care. The premiums have gone up under the ACA exchange, and we need to do more. I believe that health care is a right and not a privilege. And right now, I'm talking to too many Illinoisans who are deciding whether they need to pay their bills or go to the doctor, and that is a false choice. Everyone should be able to see a doctor when they need one. So to me, I would support the Medicare for All bill that's already been filed, and then I will continue to work with people, including making sure people understand that healthcare is a way that we can address affordability, and we need to be bold and courageous in pushing to make sure that happens. And one other thing that needs to happen is one of the reasons I'm not taking corporate PAC money is because the influence of that lobby.
Okay. All right. Needing to move up. Congresswoman Kelly, you also favor Medicare for all. How do you go about getting it accomplished? 60
Yeah,
seconds.
I'm one of the founding members of the Medicare for All caucus. We have to bring all the stakeholders to the table, whether hospitals, doctors, patients, to talk about this. And of course, members of Congress, Democrat and Republican. I oversee the bipartisan maternal health caucus. There's a bipartisan doctors caucus. So we're already talking about things that need to be done. But really, it's building relationships, bringing everyone that'll be affected, and that's hospitals, doctors, patients, to the table to discuss how we go forward. There is already a bill. There's two different bills that have some differences. So looking at those to see which one makes more sense to bring along. One goes a little bit further than the other. But I have a huge healthcare portfolio, so this is of the utmost concern to me.
Congressman Krishnamurthy, now you are not pushing for Medicare for all, instead favoring full Medicaid expansion and a public option on the exchange. Why this path rather than a single-payer system? 60 seconds.
Well, first of all, my wife's an anesthesiologist. The joke is that we both put people to sleep. So be advised when I answer this question. I believe Medicare for all is an excellent goal. Right now, our healthcare system is being consumed by a 5-alarm fire instigated by Donald Trump. As you know, what he calls the big, beautiful bill, I call the large, lousy law, is going to strip health insurance from 13 million people in the next several years. In addition, the Republican refusal to extend ACA tax credits is going to lead to 4 more million people losing health insurance. So 17 million people are going to lose health insurance, and 11 hospitals are going to close in Illinois. And so I think we should first take my bill called the Bringing Back Benefits Act up and pass that, which would restore the cuts to Medicaid. Next, we need to expand the number of people, a number of drugs that are subject to negotiation under Medicare, and we need to lower the age to enroll in Medicare. That's another bill that I've sponsored as well.
Speaking of the hospitals, candidates, 9 rural Illinois hospitals are on a short list for being at risk or closing due to federal funding cuts. How much should the U.S. government spend to keep those hospitals running? 60 seconds, Congressman Krishnamurthy.
Well, I think that these hospitals are vital to the health care of the communities in which they're situated. I visited a hospital in Benton, Illinois, down in southern Illinois. It is a hospital, it's a rural hospital that serves hundreds of thousands of people in the area, and people travel from hours to get there. That is one of the hospitals that's subject to close. I believe that the federal government must support making sure that hospital stays open. Why? Because if that doesn't stay open, people aren't going to be able to get the health care they need, regardless of their insurance status. And so what I believe is we need to provide additional funding to make sure, through my Bringing Back Benefits Act, that hospital and the others stay open, and we do more. And so that means, for instance, expanding Medicaid. It means making sure those ACA tax credits are extended for Obamacare, because everybody is affected when some people lose their health insurance.
Lieutenant Governor Stratton, 60 seconds, same question.
Yes, well, first, let me say that I am proud to lead the Governor's Rural Affairs Council. So for the last 7 years, as the only candidate here who has represented the entire state of Illinois, rural affairs has been very important to me, and rural health care especially important. I know that there are 9 hospitals potentially on the chopping block, only increasing the healthcare deserts that we often see in our rural communities. And so we should do whatever we can. It's why I'm fighting for Medicare for all, because I believe that we should do more to make sure that everyone can have access to a hospital and to health care that they need, and quality health care that they need. I do want to point out that the congressman says that he's not in favor of Medicare for all right now. He said it's a nice goal, but he doesn't want to fight for that right now. He is the number one on the list of those that have received contributions from healthcare actors, and those same actors have spent millions lobbying against Medicare for all, so it's no surprise to me that he doesn't want to see it happen.
Congressman Krishnamurthy, 30 seconds to respond.
There she goes again, attack, attack, attack. Look, that is preposterous, that is incorrect what the Lieutenant Governor is saying. And again, the issue here is if a Medicare for all bill came up, I would vote for it. But right now, we have a 5-alarm fire that's consuming our healthcare system that we need to address. We need to come together to beat back what Trump is doing to our healthcare system. At the end of the day, when these people lose their health insurance, it doesn't mean they're not going to get sick. They're just going to end up in our emergency rooms, and we are all going to pay for it.
Congresswoman Kelly, I want to bring you into the conversation. 60 seconds on the hospitals.
Well, first of all, we can't let the big ugly bill go into full implementation, because that's when the Medicaid cuts will go into implementation around the country. So you've heard 9 hospitals will close in Illinois, 33 hospitals will close in Louisiana. So we can't let that go into effect. That's why this election, November 2026, is extremely important. There are half the counties are healthcare deserts and maternal health deserts. I had a farmer tell me when his wife had a baby, he had to drive 60 miles to the hospital. She wasn't ready, 60 miles back. Then she was ready, 60 miles back. So that will, letting the big ugly bill go into full effect, that will make it even worse. And frankly, people will die. So the federal government needs to support Medicaid, and because that's what supports a lot of our hospitals. Whether you're on Medicaid or not, if your hospital closes, your hospital closes. So it's not the other guy, unless you're in the well-off and well-connected, we're the other guy, or you will be.
All right, candidates, we're rocking and rolling, although we need to take a short break.
Breathe. First, a tribute to Reverend Jesse Jackson. The civil rights pioneer changed the American political landscape with his 1988 presidential campaign. Here he is on the debate stage exactly 38 years ago this week. Reverend Jackson died Tuesday at the age of 84. We're back in 90 seconds.